When we have kids in school, we want to help set them up for success, but sometimes they struggle with a specific subject, or they need help with homework, or maybe they're not getting challenged enough in class. IXL Learning is an online learning program for kids covering math, language arts, science, and social studies. IXL is designed to help them really understand and master topics in a fun way with positive feedback. As a student, Eleanor really struggles with math, and IXL Learning is the kind of product that really helps a child like her.
Don't miss out. 1 in 4 students in the U.S. are learning with IXL. IXL is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Happier with Gretchen Rubin listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXLlearning.com/happier. Visit IXLlearning.com/happier to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Wayfair is the place to shop for all things home this holiday season, from sofas to spatulas and everything you need for holiday hosting, like festive cookware, cozy bedding, and holiday decor galore. Gretchen, I think we are hosting Christmas this year, and I recently got 2 extra side tables for the outside, and they will be well used this Christmas.
And the thing about using Wayfair is that it is so convenient. Wayfair has everything that our homes need for the holidays. So if you're getting ready to host, Wayfair has so many selections. There's something for every style and every home, no matter what your space or budget. It's a one-stop holiday shop for everything we need. And free and easy shipping, even on the big stuff. They'll even help you set it up. Wayfair is your one-stop holiday shop for everything on your to-do list this season. Head to wayfair.com right now to get your home holiday ready. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Hello, we're here for More Happier, a podcast where we get more happier. It's National Get Organized Week, and as we're sure you can imagine, that makes us very happy. We're excited to share some of our favorite tips for clearing clutter in your life, including a try this at home suggestion, ideas for applying the 4 tendencies framework to get chores done, and clutter clearing tips that didn't make it into my book, Outer Order, Inner Calm.
Gretch, as you know, clutter is something that is an ongoing struggle in my life. It is a very good idea for me to revisit these tips.
Yes. Okay, first up, listen to this try this at home tip from a listener that is very useful. It's easy to do and a great way to tackle clutter in our lives. Well, speaking of clutter clearing and kind of on the theme of spring cleaning, our try this at home tip this week is to look at your home with the eyes of a stranger. So if you're trying to get yourself geared up to clear clutter, one way to spot areas that need to be tackled is to look around your place as if you didn't live there. The way it works for me is if I know people are coming over, especially if mom and dad are coming for a visit, I see things much more clearly. Like if I know somebody who doesn't live in this house is coming over, I see things in a very different light. And I think, well, what would this look like to them? What would these giant stacks of books overflowing the coffee table, what would they think? And I'm like, I think I need to tackle that. How about you, Alyssa?
Well, it's funny that we were talking about this because on Happier in Hollywood, we've been talking about how my writing partner, Sarah, is moving to Ojai.
Yeah, that's a bold, big move. It's exciting.
Yes, she is going to be selling her house. So inspired by that, I was walking around our house as if a realtor were preparing to put it on the market and sort of evaluate its worth with a cold eye.
Yeah.
And so that's really helpful because you can think about what aspects might drag down its value, what changes would allow it to command a better price. Could you transform that junk room into an office or an exercise room? So there's so much that you can look at with an eye toward if you were like at an open house.
Right. Right. Well, and kind of along the same lines, you can imagine, what if you were going to list your place on Airbnb and if somebody were going to come over, what would they think? Or if they saw pictures of it on the website, what would they think about? Like, oh, why is all that stuff piled on the top of the cabinets or whatever. You sort of take it for granted, but then when you try to look at it with the eyes of a stranger.
Yes, you could also imagine that you're a professional organizer or a house cleaner, like called in to bid on doing this job. Like that would be a scary thought in our house.
Yeah, well, I think when we assume the identity of who doesn't have our personal connection, we see things differently because we're used to it. It's our stuff. It feels one way to us, but getting that distance gives us perspective.
Yes, I was actually at my sister-in-law's and I noticed like she has no clutter and it's so pleasing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny. I did a little happier related to this because I've never forgotten when I was in college, my friend Sarah lived off campus. And you know how you have to, in order to get your safety deposit back, everything has to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
And so she, was frantically cleaning her apartment, clearing it up. And then she said to me, you know what? Don't wait until you're moving out to clean your apartment. After you clean it up, you realize how nice it was all along. Listen, this is a try this at home that I still do. It's kind of an example of reframing where you frame yourself as a stranger walking into your own home. And it's funny how just imagining yourself as a real estate broker or as kind of a unfriendly guest really makes me see my apartment in a completely different way.
Yeah, Gretch, when we took on hosting Christmas for the whole Fierro side of the
Huge
family.
Gold stars for you for that.
I imagined people walking in who had never been to our house and what they were seeing, and it definitely motivated me to get rid of clutter.
Yeah, it's such an easy shift to make, but it's surprising how it highlights a completely different set of tasks and stacks that just fade into the background in ordinary life. If you don't use this, try this at home.
Yes, I can have a tote bag sitting on the dining room table for 6 months easily until I look at it through the eyes of another. Okay, Gretch, next up, the 4 Tendencies framework is useful for so many things, including how to get chores done. But first, this break. Gretchen, you know I love quince.
Mm-hmm.
And as summer turns to fall, even here in LA, it's getting cooler. I love slipping into my quince cozy sweaters. In fact, I'm wearing one right now. I'm wearing one of my cashmere tees. I absolutely love all of their cashmere. They're known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from just $50. And it's not just that. All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
Well, and how do they do that? By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, which passes the saving on to us, the consumer. Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
We all have bad days, and sometimes bad weeks, and maybe even bad years. But the good news is we don't have to figure out life all alone. I'm comedian Chris Duffy, host of TED's How to Be a Better Human podcast. And our show is about the little ways that you can improve your life, actual practical tips that you can put into place that will make your day-to-day better. Whether it is setting boundaries at work or rethinking how you clean your house, each episode has conversations with experts who share tips on how to navigate life's ups and downs. Find How to Be a Better Human wherever you're listening to this.
Now let's talk about a 4 Tendencies tip.
Yes. Now, continuing with this theme of clutter and relationships. Now, if you are experiencing a conflict because someone is not doing what you believe is their part in terms of clutter clearing, one thing that can really help is to consider their tendency. And we've talked about the tendencies many times. And if you want to take the quiz to find out your tendency, go to quiz.gretchenrubin.com. And I'll also post a link to an overview if you don't know about the tendencies. But for the purposes of this discussion, we will assume that people are up to speed with the tendencies.
Yes. So, Gretch, start with upholders.
Yeah. Now, upholders do best when expectations are very explicit, when there are clear, agreed upon rules. And so if you feel like someone's an upholder and they're not doing their part, it may be that they've just decided that this is neither an inner nor outer expectation that they feel like they need to observe, and so they don't do it. And so you want to have a conversation and to explain why you think it should be done and come to an agreement about it, because it may be that you just have different understandings of what should be expected of a person in a situation.
What about questioners?
Okay, so here's the thing to remember about questioners. They want reasons, and they don't like anything arbitrary. So if you ask them to do something and your reason is basically because I say so, because I want it done, because we have to, these aren't good reasons for questioners. And so if you're going to ask them to do something, explain why it needs to be done and when it needs to be done. Because let's say you say to your sweetheart, hey, listen, we need to clean out the basement this weekend. Your sweetheart could think, why?
Right.
Why should we clean out the basement? We never use the basement. Why do we have to do it this weekend? Why should I listen to you?
Right.
And if you said, hey, listen, your family's coming over next Saturday, and if we clean out the basement before they come, the kids can play in the basement and the adults can have more adult time away from all the cacophony of the children, but we're going to be away on Sunday, so we need to do it this Saturday so that we're ready for when your family comes. That is, why are we doing it? Why are we doing it at a particular time? And why do you care? And it's like, okay, that makes sense. And questioners are interested in efficiency. So if you want to talk to them about, like, is there a way we can make this more efficient? They might be very interested in that. They're also usually very interested in fairness, but they do like facts. So if you feel like the facts are on your side, you might want to write down what you're doing, what your partner is doing, and why you think maybe that should be rejiggered.
Typical questioner thing would be, why do we make the bed if we just unmake it every night?
I mean, that is a legit question.
A good question.
You know what I mean? It's like, that is true. That is the situation. To give you an illustration of how this plays out, I have a friend who's a questioner and she's married to an upholder. And he said to her, hey, I really want you to keep the kitchen cabinet doors and drawers closed. So let's make a rule that if you come into the kitchen, we'll all close the drawers and doors. And she said, why should I? And he said, well, because I like it that way. And she's like, well, I don't care. And he said, okay, well, why don't you make a rule and I'll make a rule. So I'll make the rule about the doors of the cat and the drawers, and you make a rule about something you care about. And she said, I don't want to make rules for you. You follow your own rules and I'll follow my rules. And I was like, that's exactly upholder versus questioner. He's like, let's throw some rules at this. And she's like, well, why should we? So that's how
that's funny. And of course, Gretch, obligers. We are the ones who need outer accountability.
Yes. Now, if you're talking about like a sweetheart relationship, remember that sweethearts often don't make good outer accountability. They're too close. They're too inner. So if it's not working to hold your partner accountable yourself, you might need to find a different kind of accountability. Sometimes charts work, sometimes scheduling work, sometimes like everybody in the household doing chores at the same time. So there's that peer pressure if this is the time when we clean the house. Thinking about a duty to be a role model, duty to be to the future self. Keeping the house nice for others. I have to say, like, as an upholder, when somebody said, oh, I feel like I have to keep it nice for other people, I'm kind of like, well, you should just do it for yourself. But for upholders, that's actually a helpful thing to think about. But here is the thing. Obliger rebellion.
Ah, yes.
Make sure you are showing appreciation for what the obliger is doing. Make sure that you are doing your share and you are not free riding off the efforts of the obliger. Help that obliger take vacations. Because this is a place where obliger rebellion often kicks in. I've heard from many obligers during this pandemic period when they're like, oh, one day I just decided I'm not cooking for you people anymore.
Yeah, I have too.
And here's something else. Sometimes with the other tendencies, like let's say the obliger is like, no one helps me. And I say, well, tell the kids to help you. The kids are supposed to help. Make the kids help. It's work to make kids help. It's work to get to nudge and nag kids to do chores that they are supposed to do. That is work. And so to tell the obliger, well, you either have to do the work of nudging and reminding, or you have to do the work yourself. You should consider the nudging and nagging to be a chore on its own.
Yes, I would propose it's more work to get a kid to do something than to do it yourself.
100%. Absolutely. Now that you say that, absolutely, that's true. And that's why a lot of times we end up doing stuff.
Yes.
Because you're just like, it's just easier to do it myself. But then in the end, it's just, that's how you end up with obliger rebellion there.
Okay, Gretch, what about rebels? Because you could imagine that some rebels just would be like, forget it, I'm not worrying about any sort of clutter.
Well, Again, with rebels, you want to think about identity, freedom, and choice. So it's their identity. So it might be their identity of like, I'm a hospitable person who loves a beautiful house, and that's part of my identity. You could think about your identity as like a responsible parent or a reliable partner, because often, rebels will choose to do something out of love for you. And so you can say like, I know it seems like a silly thing, but these popsicle sticks are just really, really grating on my nerves. And it would really make a big difference to me if you would throw them away. And it's like, okay, well, I could choose to do that out of love for you. But remember, the nagging, the reminding, the helpful reminders, this can often set up the spirit of resistance. So you want to be very careful with rebels that you fit it into the rebel tendency with identity, freedom, choice, love, not you have to, you must, this is the rule, I'm telling you, I'm reminding you, because that tends to ignite the spirit of resistance. Elizabeth, I love talking about the 4 tendencies framework at any time and applying it to any context. But as somebody who loves outer order, I get a special kick out of thinking about how the 4 tendencies framework applies in the context of getting chores done and getting stuff put away.
Well, and Gretch, because I do have my clutter challenge, anything I can do to help make it better is great. And as an obliger, knowing that I need accountability is always going to make a difference.
Well, I think that's why having guests is often really helpful for obligers. Like I remember an obliger was saying, oh, I've just dumped everything into my guest room. How do I get it out? And I could tell that she was expecting me to come up with all these different solutions. But instead I just said, invite somebody to stay for the weekend. And I could see from her face that she was like, oh, yeah, that would work. Now I really do have to clean out my guest room.
Yes.
As an upholder, for me, it's more about putting the time on my calendar. Like this Sunday from 2 to 4, I'm going to clean out my office, which is something I really need to put in my calendar because I have a lot of flotsam and jetsam in my office, and I need to put it on my calendar because that's what works for me as an upholder. Now, Elizabeth, you do not love talking to people about clutter the way I do. It is one of my favorite subjects. And because I love it so much, that means I'm always learning more ideas for how to clear clutter that might work better or worse for different people. And here are some tips we talked about that didn't make it into my book, Outer Order, Inner Calm, but that are still worth thinking about. Now, Elizabeth, this week our Try This at Home tip is on the subject of clutter clearing and creating outer order, which is the current thing that's on my mind all the time. These are tips that didn't make it into the book, Outer Order, Inner Calm.
And why didn't they make it into the book, Gretch?
So this is the thing. I keep thinking about this and talking to people and going over to people's houses and helping them clear their clutter. And I keep thinking of more and more things, which is very annoying. It's very annoying to have an idea that I would love to have included in the book when it's too late. So I'm going to get them out in the world here since I didn't get them into the book.
I think you're going to have to write a sequel.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I would love to do that. So here's one that I think is hilarious. And I had seen it before, but I saw a very vivid example of it recently. And this is to beware of the frenzy of the clear. So divers, deep sea divers can experience the danger rapture of the deep where they stay down too long. And I've seen people experience the frenzy of the clear. And this is when we get so intoxicated by the joy of relinquishment and like seeing all this space open up that they just start tossing or giving away just about everything. And I was helping a friend clear clutter the other day, and he threw away an unopened package of padded mailer envelopes. Which is like, I'm like, so I was like, this is not even open. Why are you throwing this away? And he said, oh, those things never work. I was like, what are you talking about? These things always work. It's an envelope.
Get him to put it back?
Yeah, no, well, I took it. I was like, if you don't want it, I'll take it. Because I use them all the time to mail out books. So I was like, well, I could use this. So I took it home. I know. But no, sometimes the frenzy can be helpful because it does make it very, very easy to let things go because you're just sort of so swept up into it. But I do think that if you have too much frenzy, you could make mistakes. You could end up regretting things. You could just be wasteful, like, just like getting rid of so much stuff. So I think it's important to stay mindful. Like you really want to get rid of everything you don't need, use, or love, but you want to make sure that you really are asking yourself that question.
Well, I have to say, I've never had the problem of the frenzy of the clear. I wish I did sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gretchen, it's the fine line between being mindful and mindless and then too mindful. So it's a tightrope, this clutter clearing.
It is. It is. Got to watch out both ways. Now, here's another thing that I wish that I had gone into more in the book. So if you're the person who's annoyed by someone else's clutter, and so you're the one who's the neat one, a lot of times there's like the neat one and the messy one, the Felix and the Oscar, and you're very annoyed by someone else's clutter, you should ask yourself, and I've asked myself this, have I worked to clear my own clutter? Have I truly achieved outer order with my own possessions in what I can control myself?
This is like physician heal thyself.
Yeah, yes. No, because often there's so many things going on here. One is often my clutter feels different from your clutter. So like I might have a huge project out on the dining room table for a month, which I think is fine, but you leave crumbs on the kitchen counter and I think like, oh my gosh, how can we live like this? And also you sort of become inured to your own clutter. And so by clearing your own clutter, you bring down the kind of the volume, you create more outer order, which then I think builds up your bandwidth for tolerating other people's clutter because you have more order in your own sphere. And so often you can change the atmosphere of the environment just by handling what is totally within your own control.
Yeah, I'm surprised this one didn't make it into the book, Gretchen, because this seems kind of like a true rule.
No, I mean, these are deep issues. And I sort of keep uncovering more and more things that I want to pursue. And I think that's a really important one, which is just always begin by doing what is within your own power to do.
Yes.
And then it often will change the way you feel about a situation generally.
Gretchen, I know another thing that you have discovered in your clutter journey is that if you're trying to nudge yourself or others to clear a space, think about what other use you can make of it. And I'm sort of dealing with that.
Oh, because with your office.
Yes.
Yeah, because this is very helpful. And this is also especially helpful for rebels. I think it's helpful for all the tendencies, but especially for rebels, because if you have a space where it's kind of becoming a junk room where everything's sort of being dumped in there, if you think to yourself, well, could this space become a music room? Could it be a yoga room or a meditation room? Could I make a little reading nook out of it? For a lot of people, it's more satisfying to be thinking about getting something than relinquishing or coping with something. So instead of saying like, oh, let's clear out the junk room just to get rid of the junk, it's like, oh, let's clear out the junk room so we can have a music room. For a lot of people, that feels more appealing.
Yeah. And like with my home office, I want to clear out the clutter so that I can make room to store my entertaining items. I'm trying to entertain more. I want to have nice placemats and vases and things like that. But I really don't have room for all that in my kitchen. And so I want to clear out my office so that it can be the place where I keep that stuff and have easy access to it.
Right. And that just feels more purposeful and also just like more fun to get something than to just be like, okay, now I need to go through all of these like old cables and figure out what I need. That's like, Now here's something, I don't really have an answer for this, but I realize it's a kind of clutter that really haunts me. And I think for a lot of people, it's a problem. And this is when we get something often from a store where they're of a quality that's too good for their purpose. Like a store gives you something in a box that's a really, really sturdy box. Or like you're getting a pair of shoes and it has really, really nice shoe bags, which I never use. Or you get like a shopping bag that's not really quite a tote bag, but it's like better than just like a regular shopping bag. And then it's sort of like, what do you do? And I never know what to do with these things because if I can't use them, they're just clutter and I should give them away, recycle, or toss them. But they kind of go into the zone when you're like, well, should I hang on to this box? Because I don't really have a use for this box, but it's not just like some nasty box. It's like, it's really, really good. And it's sort of annoying to me because it feels wasteful to have made something too good for its purpose, which is basically just like a temporary purpose.
Yeah, Gretch, I literally right now am looking at a box that falls under this category. A friend of mine gave me a t-shirt for Christmas in a really nice Christmas gift box.
Yeah.
So I can only use it at Christmas. It wouldn't be appropriate to put a gift in it now.
Yeah.
But like, where do I keep it so that I feel like I just need to have it out so that I remember it exists? Because if I put it away in December, am I going to remember that gift box? But it's way too nice to get rid of.
Right.
So it's like in limbo while I try to figure out where to put it.
Right. Well, and you don't want to have it out, from March until December, and then you'll miss your window inevitably.
Which is the path we're on now. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I'm coming to LA. We're going to deal with this. Okay. Well, and then there's the problem of like when things are in a holding pattern. And I found this in my own closet recently where, sometimes you just wear things so much that you just get sick to death of them. So Mom, our mother, lent me this kind of blue striped jersey summer shirt. And I wore it a ton. I wore it a ton for a couple of years. And then I just got sick of it. I'm like, I never want to wear that thing again. And last summer, I realized now looking back, I didn't wear it at all because I was so tired of it. But it was still in my closet because I was like, well, should I give it back to Mom? Does she want it back? Because she sort of lent it to me. Or should I just give it away because she's sick of it too? And I just kept it for months and months and months because I just, in my mind, didn't know what to do. And then finally I thought, why don't I just ask her? So I emailed her a picture. I was like, do you want this back or should I give it away? And she said, bring it back and I'll figure it out. So now I know what to do with it,
So you handed it off to her for it to be in limbo.
Well, she'll have to figure out what to do with it. But if she'd said, hey, I don't want it back, then I could have just given it away. I mean, I went through this with a friend who was going through her closet and she's like, well, my sister's pregnant. Maybe she'll want this. She could wear this like as part of that. And then we had this big pile. And I'm like, why don't you just text your sister right now and say, do you want some of my clothes as maternity clothes or not? Because you're creating this whole limbo pile because you don't know what your sister wants.
Yes. Ask the person.
Yes.
Yeah, I had this scratch, a similar thing with some sweaters I had. They didn't fit me. And I didn't know, should I keep these? Should I give them to Mom? I just wasn't sure what I should do. So they sat in a drawer for like 7 years. At which point, no one wanted them, 7 years later. But Gretch, speaking of holding patterns, another thing you've taught me is that if something doesn't fit or it needs repair, give yourself a timeline and do it.
Yeah.
So don't just say, oh, I'll get those shoes fixed, someday in, 2030. You got to do it now.
Right. And if you're like, okay, I'm going to give myself a deadline in 3 weeks, and then you can't be bothered to do it in the next 3 weeks, probably you don't really care. And probably you've already had that thing for months or years anyway, This seems to be a particular problem with jewelry. People often talk about needing to get jewelry repaired. So it's like, give yourself a timeline and just do it, or then don't do it at all.
Yeah, I know why that's a problem, by the way.
Oh.
I think people, if they have nice jewelry, worry if they leave it somewhere, will something happen to it? And so they feel hesitant to part with it. So then, but it's doing you no good being broken in your jewelry box.
Right.
So it's a conundrum.
Yes. But speaking of fixing things, one thing to watch out for is paying to get something fixed that you don't even like. I've made this mistake.
Oh,
like I'll be
I
like
did that with a pair of shoes.
Yeah, well, it's like, oh, you want to sort of console yourself from the fact, like I'll console myself from the fact that I like made a mistake in purchasing something, and I'll make an excuse to myself, like the reason I don't wear these pants is because they're just like a little too long, they don't look right, and so then I go get them hemmed. But then I paid good money to get them hemmed, and then I'm like, you know what? I just don't like these pants. So it's like I just dug myself in deeper.
So be honest with yourself.
Yes.
Now, Gretch, one idea I know you believe, but you don't talk about in the book, is that it's okay to get rid of books.
Yes. I think you really have to ask yourself, what is your philosophy for what books you're going to keep and what books you're going to give away, and really be relentless. Because like I reread a lot, so I would keep books that I would reread. You don't really like to reread.
Right.
So, maybe there are books that you can get rid of. Or if they're related to, like, if you're like, oh, I want to keep all the books I read in college, maybe you could just pick one book that sort of stands for everything I read in college, and then you can get rid of the other ones. We had like giant shelves of all of our law school case books, and then we got it down to like 5 case books, and now we have Black's Law Dictionary, and I'm like, that's all we need from law school. You can open up a lot of space on your shelves if you're really... Now, I have huge amounts of books. I'm a big believer in having a lot of books, but you want to have the books that you want, and not just like a lot of books that have been sitting on the shelf and no one's paid any attention to them for decades.
Yes, and I am taking this to heart, Gretchen. I've been doing bags of books, so I'm following this.
Excellent. You're making a lot of clutter clearing strides.
I'm trying, which reminds me, Gretchen, I had a minor clutter victory.
Ooh.
It wasn't even a clutter clearing victory. It was actually a pre-clutter victory.
Ooh, that's even better.
So here's what happened. Jack was in the Spanish play at school. Every year, the third graders do a Spanish play, and it's, of course, the most adorable thing. And they all work so hard, and they did an amazing job. And of course, we videotaped his part of the play.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, there's an official DVD of the play. And so several emails went out. If you want this DVD, fill out the form. It's, $25 or whatever. And I was about to sort of automatically fill out the form. Like, of course we want a DVD of the Spanish play. But then I said to Adam, it just occurred to me, do we really want a DVD of the Spanish play? Are we really ever going to sit down and watch an hour-long Spanish play? By the way, neither of us speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And we have parts of it videotaped anyway. And Adam was like, I don't think we need that.
Yeah.
And so we did not get the DVD. It went against all of our parent instincts to want to hoard every little bit of evidence of everything Jack does. But we realized we're just never going to sit down and watch this again.
Right.
And so I felt such a victory that I did not bring another DVD into my house.
Well done. Keep it out of the house to begin with.
You're rubbing off on me, Gretchen.
That's right. That's right.
Gretchen, it cracks me up sometimes to think about you making a new friend and them not realizing that they have a happiness bully / closet cleaner on their hands. I bet so many people are surprised when you show up and are ready to dig into their closet for 3 hours.
Now, I offer much more often than somebody takes me up on it, I have to say. But, one of the reasons I love to do it, I'm always gathering these hacks and looking for new ways to clear clutter. And it seems like every time I am with a friend sorting through their stuff, I find new tricks and tips and hacks. And so I feel like I'm helping them, but I'm also helping myself in my eternal quest for more clutter clearing ideas.
Plus, you get a buzz.
Plus, I get the buzz. I get the vicarious buzz. That's what I really love.
Okay, coming up, we have a story about someone who fell into a familiar trap. He blamed someone else for a problem and ignored his own role in a situation. But first, this break. This show is sponsored by MIDI Health. There are great things that come with age, wisdom, experience, a love of gardening and holiday decorations, to name just a few. But if you're a woman over 40, it can also bring some less desirable things. Hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, and weight gain. All symptoms of menopause and perimenopause. I have friends of all ages, and I have been hearing about these symptoms for years.
Yes, hormonal transition is a fact of life, but that doesn't mean you have to accept its symptoms as just another part of aging. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts equipped to support you with safe, effective, FDA-approved medications, as well as lifestyle coaching and preventative health guidance. All their services are covered by insurance, and they're conveniently accessible through telehealth visits and 24/7 messaging. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
The Turning Points podcast is back with a new season. Turning Points is a podcast from Point 32 Health in partnership with Boston Globe Media. Dedicating time to your mental health isn't always easy, but it is important. Perhaps you're facing an adult diagnosis of ADHD or autism. Gretch, there's a lot of people with ADHD in my life, always looking for a podcast that addresses that. Or maybe you're searching for ways to release the trauma held in your body. Or you could be exploring death doulas as a mode of end-of-life care for a loved one. No matter what you're going through, your turning point could be just around the corner.
Host Frances Leese talks to guests who have faced incredible mental health challenges with strength, determination, and bravery. She also talks to experts for tips on healing through group therapy, how to handle the mental and emotional toll of cancer, working through PTSD, and more. Check out Season 4 of Turning Points, Navigating Mental Health, a podcast from Point 32 Health in partnership with Boston Globe Media. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. October is a season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to at work and social settings around our family. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take off the mask. For me, therapy helped me really find my voice, which is so important when you want to be present and be yourself.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Gretchen Rubin today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gretchen Rubin.
I've been doing strength training for years, so I've become good friends with my trainer, Mike. And Mike and I often talk about mutual interests like habit formation, low-carb eating, and clutter clearing. Like me, Mike is someone who really thrives in orderly, organized surroundings. My sister Elizabeth calls me a happiness bully because I can get pretty forceful if I think there's a way for someone to be happier. So one day, when Mike was complaining about how messy his house was, I encouraged him to tackle the clutter. You'll feel so great, I told him. It's so energizing. It's so freeing. He said, I know, I feel exactly the same way. The thing is, I'm really neat. I like everything to be put away in its place. But my wife is so messy. It drives me nuts. How does this come up? I asked. What are the conflicts? I am a happiness bully. Mike said, for instance, I'll be sitting down at the kitchen table to tackle some household administrative task she wants me to do. But everything is so disorganized that I have to spend half an hour cleaning up before I can focus. And after all that, I don't feel like dealing with those tasks anymore. And then she gets annoyed with me. Do you like being in the thick of the action? I asked. Is that why you're sitting in the kitchen? No, that really doesn't matter to me, he said. So Mike, I said, maybe you could find a place in your house, like a desk or a table in a corner, where you could keep things very organized, just the way you like it to be when you work. And everyone else would agree not to disturb that area and just leave it for you as your place. Do you think they'd agree to that? He looked at me with surprise. Well, I have an office, he said. Well, why don't you use your office? I asked. Because it's too messy, he said. And the minute he said those words, he became seized with a desire to clear it out. He was inspired by the vision of how great it would be to have it fixed up right. In fact, that weekend, he sent me a video to show off how orderly he'd made his office. When I saw him for my next strength training session, he couldn't wait to tell me about everything he had done. It looks fantastic, he concluded. I'm just about finished. I'm about 85% of where I want to be. I had to ask, so what's left to do? He said, well, one thing that looks messy is that my winter coat is always on the floor. I had to ask, Mike, why is your winter coat on the floor? He said, because my wife is so messy and has so much stuff. The coat closet in our front hallway is full of her coats, so I'm supposed to hang up my coat upstairs in our bedroom closet. Well, I said, I agree. It's pretty unrealistic to think you'll walk all the way up to the bedroom to hang up your coat. And I know your wife loves clothes and probably does need a lot of room in that hallway closet. But Mike, I suggested, do you think that maybe a solution would be to hang a few hooks or put a coat rack in the garage? It's not as convenient as the hall closet, but it would still be a lot easier to grab your coat if you were going for a walk in the neighborhood or driving somewhere. Could you do that? He looked at me with surprise. Well, we have a mudroom. I started to laugh. So Mike, I asked, why don't you use the mudroom? Because it's too messy, he replied. And he started to laugh too. He knew what I was going to suggest next. And the next weekend, they cleaned out the mudroom. What is the moral of this story? Is it's easy to blame other people instead of seeing our own role in a problem? Is it that the only person we can change is ourselves? So if we're unhappy or annoyed with the situation, we should always begin by asking, how might I be able to change things for the better? Is it that sometimes it's easier for an outsider to spot a solution that we've overlooked? I think it's all of those things. And I realize that I'm lucky that my friend is so good-natured about the happiness bully side of my nature. I offer it with love. I love when my friends tell me their own stories with clutter clearing. Like, they give me this glimpse into their private lives. I learn so much from them, and I get so much joy from being that happiness bully, Elizabeth, that you fondly call me.
Yes, and you are the best one around, Gretchen. There is none other like you.
Oh, what a nice sister. Well, we hope you're feeling more happier after this episode and that you are inspired to join the National Get Organized Week and tackle some clutter. The best time to start a happiness project is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Elizabeth, I'm still so eager to help you clear your office. And I'm worried that you're going to clear it before I can get there and help you. But then on the other hand, I think, oh, there'll always probably be things for me to do.
Well, and as soon as I clear it, it'll just start piling up again.
But it happens to us all. From the Onward Project.